Welcome back to another installment, and this time I worked on a menu so that we can get away from our ugly debug test menu, and like I said, we pivoted over to a farming one for now. The web view has the debug boxes on. You can see that, maybe you can see that when I hover over a button, they sort of kinda slightly change. It's easier to see in the one without the debug boxes. The buttons work in the sense that when I click them, they will tell me what I clicked, and the exit button works, of course. Let me pull up the web view again. The web view works here as well. If I click it, it'll tell me application terminated and then force close the window. If it should force close the window is a different question. I'm not gonna deal with that now. Anyway, we cleaned up logic a bit. There's now a thing called a game state, which is an enum somewhere, if I find it. A game state which handles all of those things, and we removed a lot of the other things here. The way this works with the exit function is that this is a platform hook because it's platform specific, and on the native it simply calls process.exit. Again, questionable if we should do that or if we would rather want to do some cleanup first. And on the web platform, it calls an exit function and then calls this one as well. We technically don't need to call this one here, but that is a extern function, which means it is found in our JavaScript files, and it just calls alert and then closes the window. In the main logic, when we process the events, we just go through, figure out which game state we are in. Currently, there is only the start menu. Then the start menu can process its events. It'll spit out something. So we can model most applications and games included in that as state machines of some sort. So the current state is the menu, and we can generate some event inside the menu that indicates that we need to change state. That is what menu event is. It just means something happened and we need to react to that. If nothing happened, well, we don't care. We remain in the same state. If something happened, like settings changed, or we started loading a game, or want to start a game, we'll need to figure out how to do this later on. I imagine load game would get a parameter for which game state to load, and settings would tell us which settings were updated. That could be like full screen or language and stuff like that. And then exit obviously exits. So we have the buttons and the menu events. They're currently the same. They don't have to be, and they won't be the same because settings will be a submenu, whereas menu event settings is settings have changed. Not the same thing. And load will be a load menu, will lead to a load menu, whereas load game will actually load a will cause the main logic to actually load a game. That's a state transition again. There's a menu right now for making it easier. Like I said, this will change. And there's a next and previous logic in the button ordering that is for up and down buttons within the menu that we saw. And we can't go below exit and we can't go above start. We could loop around if we wanted to. And we could model this as an array instead and just have an index into it, and next and previous moves the index, but whatever, this is easier to read. Start menu keeps a track of which button is actually currently focused. That is the outline. It also has a map or lookup which element ID corresponds to which button. I'm not actually sure we really need this. We can get away without it if we wanted to. Actually, I'm not sure if I'm still using it. I changed the code a few times. And then we have our event manager. When we create it, we simply load a font of some sort. This is one of my test fonts. Maybe I'll figure out a different font style, make my own font. I don't know. Anyway, we just load it, which the menu uses. Right, I set up an element world. Currently, before that was handled through the event manager, which wasn't very nice, but element world is now just a incrementer of IDs. We could do it like the ECS and reference count them and release them again, but I don't think a UI should have that many IDs, and it shouldn't be aggressively creating and dropping them, but maybe it will. We'll see how we use the UI later. Right, and then we just create our buttons for each type. For each button type, we can get some more space, create a button, and this is where I'm starting to actually use the framework for once. We create a text field with our font somewhere. There, our menu font. And the label, which is just the button type debug printed, basically. I may wanna have some more sophistication here, especially for translations, if I want to add translations. We grab a reference to whichever button is focused, and then simply create our label. We anchor it, as in we center it. Then we make it not interactive, and that is, if this was interactive, the text field, then it would intercept the click events, and then we would not be noticing that the button was clicked, because the text field has a hitbox itself for text editing and stuff. So we're just disabling the interactivity on the text field itself. We put a button around it. We turn it into a button. And here we're simply detecting if this button ID, if a button and button type is the focused button. And if it is, we give it a different border. Now, why is it white? Why is our border color white, right? It's white. I will need to look at that in a second. Anyway, if it is in focus, we have a different color. Transparent works correctly. And we simply update the, I am assuming the button overrides this, probably from some test code. It gets the interaction stuff. I don't know if the button still needs this at all, actually, because it's handled on the outside. Now, in a previous iteration, the button was handling its own things like this, but I don't think I need this anymore. I'll deal with that some other time. We're gonna push the button information in here, and then we're going to add some padding around the buttons as well before we put it into a flex box down here, which is the vertical. So we have some space between the buttons, and then they're arranged in a vertical way, which is then anchored again to be centered into the screen. And handle events is rather boring. mouse button, we just detect which button was clicked. And yeah, no, we still use it, right? The code's still here. Yeah, so we identify which ID corresponds to which button, and then we detect the button. This could also be a map, but the array is so short, the search is gonna be basically the same speed. Mouse enter, the same thing. Handle event, no target, that is if we never focused something. So in the event manager, when you click it, it itself tracks which element was clicked on and will spit out events. And there is no hitbox here. So if I click here, nothing is selected anymore in the event manager. But the up and down should still work in the menu. And that's what this handles. And then the keyboard event simply grabs the button that is currently in focus, grabs the next one, sets that one to focus to a focused one, and enter also emits the menu events for the button because we actually clicked it. Click does this as well somewhere. Yeah. And render target simply renders the UI, creates a context. That's the same render loop we had before. We clear the hitboxes and we call the layout function and then the draw function over the UI and return the scene, which is then handled by our scene renderer. And then these functions simply moved into the game state. I don't quite like that they're here. Because you'll need to re-implement them for every single game state, basically. And a lot of them is gonna be duplicate code to some degree. I'll think about it once I have more game states, how to abstract them neatly. But for now, game state has only one state. That's the start menu. And it's going to forward the events to the actual menu. I may want to put a trait on this. And that is it. Next, I will probably work on actually start game button to work and lead to a transition where we are going to have a simple map where some character can move around using the keyboard and or mouse. And we can then that extend with a tile map of some sort and start the actual building the game from there. Just a quick update button. Yeah, it does indeed test code in here. Well, the previous implementation of hovered and focused, which overrode the border color. That should work now correctly. It does. See you around.